Hey friends, thanks for joining me today. This will just be a chatty video about life, one of those life chat kind of things. Hope you are settled in, snug somewhere, or maybe you're on a long drive or doing some chores around the house. That's when I find that videos like this are great to play in the background as you're keeping yourself busy. So, you know that I had a recent birthday and turned 48, which is very close to 50, which makes me think about my life in general. Well, I have to share that I am one of those people who thinks about life things. Like I'm constantly in this state of existential thought, no matter what. Like, regardless of the birthday, from day to day, I'm constantly thinking about the meaning of life. What are we doing? What is our purpose? How do we put it all together? What is it that we don't know that we should know? What happens after you die? What happens right before you're born? Where does our soul go? Do we have a soul? I mean, you can just imagine the thousands and thousands of questions that can go through someone's life as you ponder the meaning of life, the meaning of existence, why we're all here, why, all of those things, right? So, particularly as I'm approaching 50, I'm more reflective about what I've learned as a woman, and what I've learned through the decades, what I've learned about living, the things that I do know versus the things that I don't know, because as I get older I realize there is much more that I don't know and will probably never know. If I live to be 100, I may still not have any clue what happens to us after we leave this planet. So I know that sounds really deep and morbid, and I don't mean it that way. It's more like just wonderings about our entire existence. But for now, I'd like to just chat a little bit about some reflections I've had related to what I've learned through the decades about myself as a woman and how I feel like I want to move through this world. I'll say that this video is something that's been on my mind, but is also inspired by a recent video by Ijoma. Ijoma, I love her channel. I'm going to link her below. I find her to be incredibly wise for beyond her years. And she posted a video recently about how she intends to move through 2023, which I thought to myself, yes, she is right on the money. I love watching her growth as a human and the way that she expresses herself about what she's learned, who she used to be, who she is now, and who she intends to become in the future. And it's very much in keeping with thoughts that I've had recently about myself. Now, I started to write these notes before that video, but the video really, it spoke to me. It spoke to my heart. So if you like these kinds of chats, I would encourage you to go check out her channel. She's definitely a sage in my mind. And like I said, way wise beyond her years. So the way that I've organized this, I'm calling this the reinventing of myself. And I've organized this into sort of five major ways, to use some of Ijoma's language, ways that I'm planning to move through the next years of my life. So rather than this being the way that I intend to reinvent myself, it's the way that I am continuing to reinvent myself, because these are ways of living that I have come to acknowledge work for me and make sense based on how I understand the world to operate and not operate. So I've been doing these, I would say, for the better part of the past 10 years and certainly the past 5 years. And there are times that I do them more than others. So it depends on what the factors are that are influencing my life at that point and whether I live fully into these sort of five principles, is what I'll call them, five principles of reinvented Veronica. Before I talk about them, it might be helpful to give a little bit of background about why these are so important to me. So I will say, and I've shared this in other videos, that I grew up in environment, in a culture, in a household, and in a family, an extended family, that I would say moves in some ways and operates in some ways that maybe wouldn't be considered optimal or ideal in today's standards that people set for relationships and families and all of that. And without getting into a ton of detail, I would say that I grew up in a religious setting that very much encouraged guilt, guilt when you did things that were against the code of ethics. And I think I've shared that I grew up in a lot of different Christian churches. So I went to Pentecostal church, I went to Catholic church, I went to Episcopalian church, I've been to Baptist churches. I've been to them all, okay? All, well, I shouldn't say all, but many Christian denominations. But the few that I spent the most time in really used guilt as a lever to encourage people to behave in whatever the code of conduct was for that church. For the most part, we're talking about the 10 commandments. We're talking about, respecting your elders. We're talking about being kind to others, those sorts of things. So it's nothing, nefarious or out of the ordinary in terms of Christian doctrine. But the guilt thing, especially that runs through Catholicism, it can be really debilitating in terms of the way that you view the world and the way that you either accept the things that you do or chastise yourself mentally for the way that you behave in the world. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is self talk. So, reminder, I grew up in a pretty impoverished setting in the Bronx. Never really thought of it as I'm growing up poor. So, that's not the mentality that I had growing up. But I bring that up to say that sometimes in social settings where people have grown up with less and others around have less, this weird dynamic develops where there's a lot of historical context to this in terms of generations and how they think about themselves and the generation before and ahead of them. There's a lot of context related to migration into the United States. There's a lot of context related to people that have grown up with less, if you will, throughout generations and generations. So that's a whole nother conversation that is not what this video is about. I bring all of that up to say that I grew up in an environment where it's a little bit dog eat dog, there were the haves and the have nots. And because we were have nots, there were ways that people interacted with each other where they were constantly trying to prove that they were different than the people around them. So if we were all poor, how does someone set themselves apart so that they don't feel the shackles, the sort of mental shackles of being impoverished? That showed up in a lot of ways. So you could have been the pretty one. And if you were pretty, then you got to be different from other people and more special. You could have been the really smart one. If you're really smart, then you're not dumb like all these other ignorant folks that we live with. You get what I'm saying? You could have had the nicest clothes. And in that sense, you're special because you have something that other people can't afford. You get where I'm going with this. You could have the nice car, even though you can't have the nice house. Like maybe we all lived in the same apartments, but if you had a nice car and everybody else was taking public transportation, then you were special. You were special. You can imagine all the different ways that being better than someone else manifests itself in situations where everyone is kind of scrapping to get by. I will also share that in environments like that, people can speak really harshly to each other. So I grew up in an environment where people put each other down a lot, and you had to have really thick skin if you were not going to get your feelings hurt on a daily basis because it was nothing for your peers to call you names. It was nothing for your peers to put you down, tell you you ain't nothing. Who do you think you are? You're not special. You get the idea. So that is mentality, that is ways of thinking, that is socialization that you see in society, in parts of society where people have less and are trying to figure out ways to differentiate themselves from others and be more special. There's a whole psychology behind that. There's a whole sociology behind that. There are lots of books written on that, movies made about that. We don't need to get into all that. I think you get where I'm going with this, and you're getting the picture of what I grew up in. So I bring all of that up to say this many minutes into the video that I have spent the better part of my adulthood understanding that that is where I come from and understanding that I don't have to be that anymore. I'm not that person anymore. I'm not Veronica in the Bronx. I'm not Veronica having to worry about where I stand socially, economically, politically. I'm a full adult. I'm a full adult. And even though I'm just now turning 48, I will say it has taken me probably through my 30s at some point to really come to grips with that because I could see the remnants of that guilt, the remnants of that wanting to be different and setting myself apart, the remnants of who do you think you are and you're not more special than anyone else kind of ringing in my head, the remnants of the imposter syndrome that I experienced when I left the Bronx and went to boarding school and was among the intellectual and economically elite. There's a lot of that, and I still battle with some of that. But it was the realization that I came to in my 30s and probably really gripped in my 40s that I don't have to be that person and I don't have to be mentally shackled or influenced by the factors that shaped me in my childhood. There are probably more profound ways to say that, but I hope you understand what I mean. So, with that, and so that I don't go on super duper long, let's then talk about what I feel like have been some five themes for me, some principles, rather. That's the word I was going to use, my principles about how to behave so that I can take full advantage of the place where I am in my life. And let me pause to say, I'm in a, these cold shoulders. How do we feel about them? I feel like that maybe this sweater's a little big. This is a large. I probably should have gotten a medium because it's like there's so much space. So, anyway, y'all don't care. I care. Y'all don't care. Where was I going? Oh, I was going to say, let me first acknowledge I'm in a really good place in my life right now. I feel good about myself in many ways. I feel like I have figured out how to look my best. There's one exception, and that's that I shouldn't say probably, let me just say it how I want to say it. I need to get my physical self in a little bit better shape. It's not the end of the world, but I can do some work there. That's not perfect, but perfect's not what we're going for, and that's part of where I'm going with this. I'm in a fantastic, loving marriage with a man that I both love and admire, and we get along well. We have great rapport, and we get to know each other more and more year by year, and our relationship is even better year by year. We've always had a great relationship. We've had rocky moments just like every other couple. I mean, hello, that's life. Nobody's relationship is perfect on a day to day basis. Surely you go through things, but we get better and better in our relationship year after year. And it's really fun to watch that happen. In a great place with our kids. They're developing and thriving and they're healthy and happy. And I'm grateful for that. My family and extended family and friends are in pretty good places themselves. I'm in a place with my career where I'm actually happy and thrilled. I have fantastic coworkers. I am stimulated mentally, emotionally in my position. I get to lead a team of fabulous people. I love where I live. I love the life I lead, all of those things. There's nothing in my life at this moment that I have to complain about. In fact, there's a lot to celebrate, and I'm really happy about it. However, I will say that getting to this place has been like a culminating point of living through these principles. So let me get to it. How far into this video are we? Let me start with the end because I feel like everything I'm going to say has led me to this. And hang with me. We call it the soft life. The soft life. It's a thing in social media, living your best soft life. So I have this down as principle number 5, but in fact, maybe it's principle number 1, or maybe the other 4 principles have allowed me to get here because this is, I feel like, the ultimate goal. What do I mean by soft life? Everybody has a different definition of that. When I think about a soft life, I think about me being able to take the best care of myself that I know how to take with no feelings of guilt or anything else. I'm going to come back to that guilt thing in a minute. So living my soft life at this point means the following. These are really important things to me. Good sleep. Goodness, I sleep for the most part like a baby. I have figured out how number 2 under this soft life helps number 1, but let me say this. It's nothing for me to get into my pajamas, my robe at between 7 and 8 p.m. in the evening, do my cleansing routine, do my moisturizing and all the serums, moisturizing and whatever I'm going to do to my face, all of those things, get myself in my mental headspace, do my little moment of meditation, all of that, and be able to just sit in my bed in preparation to sleep, get my lights on, but turn them down low, get in that mood of like, night's here, it's time to rest your brain, rest your soul, and allow yourself the pleasure and the privilege of good, deep sleep. For me, that means the room is set at a certain temperature, preferably on the cooler side. I've got a fan going because I love to have a little breeze on me and I love to have the sound of the fan. And laying myself in that bed, I've got comfortable bedding that's important to me too, and saying my prayer, giving my moment of gratitude for the day that has passed and all of the wonderful things that happened that day. Even if it was a crappy day, I'm going to find something to be grateful for. Taking that beautiful, deep inhalation, that breath inhalation. I got real fancy with that. And dozing off to sleep. Dozing off to sleep. So most nights, not all nights, I'm asleep between 9 and 10. Sometimes I stay up a little later, sometimes I go to sleep a little earlier, but I wake up very early also. And I'll talk about that in just a second. And I love the luxury of deep sleep, deep sleep. The second thing here plays an important part, and that's good nutrition. I have moments where my nutrition is not that good. And I have other moments where I am really great with my nutrition. I know I've shared before, that for me, that means adequate protein and it means healthy fats. I'm pretty low carb, although there are moments that I'm eating all the carbs in the universe, including wine and chocolate and all of that. And I'll talk about not feeling guilty about that in a minute. But my good nutrition really, I feel like plays a great role in allowing me to sleep. If I eat too late at night, for example, I don't sleep well. If I have wine too late at night, I don't sleep well. If I have certain kinds of food, like for me, tomato sauce and things like that give me heartburn and indigestion. So good nutrition means not just eating what other people think is right for me, but what I know is right and good for me and makes my physical self feel peaceful and at ease. At ease. And on days that I don't do that, I don't sleep well and I pay the price. So, good nutrition is part of the soft life. The next thing is related also hydration and moisturization, making sure I'm getting adequate fluid during the day and making sure that I'm moisturizing my skin and all of that in all the ways that I've mentioned in other videos before I go to sleep. Then I go to sleep feeling good. I've done what I need to do to take care of my physical self through the day and through the night. Another part of, for me, of living my soft life, and this is particular to me, I must keep my house tidy. For me, that means that just about everything has a place. It's not perfect. If you came to my house, you'd see a few things out of place, of course, but my house stays clean and things stay in their place. In particular, there's certain rules I have. For example, I don't go upstairs to retire and put my robe on and do my makeup cleansing and all of that until the kitchen is right. It's squared away. That means for me, dishes are cleaned or in the dishwasher going. I've wiped down all the counters. There isn't anything out on the counters that's going to visually bother me when I come downstairs in the morning. For me, that is such a peaceful thing and a gift that I give to myself and that my family and we give to each other. We have our kids trained to help clean up after dinner. We cook, they clean. I mean, we help clean too, but they each take a pot or they wipe down the counter. Everybody has a duty, right? So the kitchen stays clean afterward. Let me say, by the way, we don't have little kids. So these rules must be completely modified. If you have young children, we've had young children, and I know how that goes. And I know that trying to keep things clean is a constant battle. I get it. So I'm just talking about where I am in my personal life. So a tidy house, that also means bathrooms, that bathrooms are clean, counters are clean and ready for, like if I use makeup products, I need a nice clean surface to put my products on. I need my bathroom, my shower rather, to be relatively clean when I step in there, all the stuff, all the stuff. And then in this same soft life category, I really treat our home like our sanctuary. So in a previous life, in my 20s, for example, friends were welcome to drop over any old time. They could just drive up, ring the doorbell, and they were welcome. Come on in, have a beer, have a glass of wine, have a Coke, stay a while. No more. I treat our house as our sanctuary, our spa, our getaway, our retreat. There's another word I'm looking for that is escaping me, but imagine how you treat just like a sanctimonious place, like the inside. Sanctimonious is not the word I'm looking for. Sacred, sacred. Our house is sacred. So I need for this house to be calm all the time. All the time. There's some chaos, of course, when the kids are active and they're leaping through the house, like 12 lords leaping through the through the house. They get a little crazy sometimes. That's totally okay. But I don't invite any old body into my house. I don't even like people ringing my doorbell when there's deliveries. Don't come to my door. Don't talk to me. Don't step foot on my property. This is our place of refuge. And I'm really cautious about who I let through the door. I need to enjoy you. I need to know that you're going to respect my home. And I need to know that you're going to leave when the time comes. I'm very funny about keeping company and I'm very funny about wearing out a welcome. If I go to your house, the minute that I sense that the welcome has come to a close or it's starting to wind down, I'm going to be wrapping up the conversation and I'm going to be standing up to get my coat and purse and thank you for having me and I'm going to leave. And I kind of expect the same of our guests too, that they give us that same courtesy. Haven't had any problems with that. Thankfully, we have friends and family that visit and they don't stay very long, and that's a good thing. We have peace in the house that way. We get to enjoy each other, and then everybody goes their merry way. But this place, this house for me is our refuge. We work from home, my husband and I, and in that sense, it is literally where we spend the majority of our time, and we treat it as such. So this is sacred ground for us, and we take very good care of our home to the extent that we know how and really cherish and value it. So, those are my mini principles under the soft life heading. So, then let's talk about the other four principles, and they're related. They're related. They're almost like breakoffs of this. The first one, and this is something that I had a lot of trouble with in in my 20s, and maybe even early to mid 30s. And that's saying no to others more and saying yes to myself more, saying yes to myself more. That is rooted in feelings of obligation and guilt that I grew up with as a young woman. Feeling like I had to constantly give of myself to others to be worthy myself. And that if I didn't do that, then others would judge me or feel like I was being selfish. And you're not allowed to be selfish. Oh, no. Well, as I've gotten older, I have come to appreciate being selfish more and more in proper ways. Of course, I take very good care of those around me and show them a lot of love. There was something that Ijoma said in her video related to this that really stood out to me. And it was about putting a high value on the love that you give to others, having really high standards for who gets to experience your love. I used to be of this mindset that I love freely, and I am generous freely to everyone. And that has changed as I've gotten older. Of course, I help people in need. You have to figure out what your own boundaries are around this. But with regard to my love as a friend, with regard to my love as a family member, even as a colleague, I now am in a place where I'm a lot pickier about who I freely give that love to. I'm courteous and I'm nice to everyone, y'all. That's not what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the people that I'm willing to go above and out of my way for. And I've learned through the years a very simple way to weed out people who are not deserving. And it goes back to, I think it was Maya Angelou who said it first. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Believe them the first time. I modify that a bit because I tend to be more forgiving. Be on alert the first time, believe them the second time. In recent years, I've been in a couple situations where I've given people a third and a fourth time chance and regretted it deeply. So, as I start to get inklings that a person doesn't have my best interest at heart, or that a person is very selfishly oriented to the point where it's going to be harmful to me, or I'm not going to be able to develop a really good relationship with them, like a genuine relationship, you know what I'm talking about. The energy vampires, the people who are always needy mentally or emotionally, the people who are always in crisis, that whole type of thing. I just don't have space in my life for that anymore. I don't. Now, of course, if one of our kids or a close family member or a close friend were in crisis, I would try to help, of course. Of course. But you know what I'm getting at. The people that eventually suck the life out of you because it's all about them all the time, or they've just always got some drama going on. I I can't. I can't. I need to say no to that. I need to say no to people who want to get together all the time. I've become more of a recluse and an introvert the older that I've gotten. I have some standing dates that I really enjoy. So I have a group of girlfriends that I used to work with who we go to dinner once a month or once every other month. Love that. Really enjoy that interaction. I have other friends that I get together with on a periodic basis, but I have started to very proactively say no to some things that just don't serve me. For example, a group of older friends who are always talking about planning a trip abroad. The trip never happens. It never gets together. And the thought of doing that with that many people and that many different personalities, quite frankly, just drains the life out of me. I can't imagine a scenario where I would enjoy that and would rather be there than be here with my family. You know what I'm saying? So, from that perspective, those things are becoming no's, especially after I became a mom. It became very important to me to dedicate my time to being a mother. And so friends were on the back burner. And that's just the way that it goes. And some people didn't understand that. And they couldn't accept that my time was going to go to my family first and foremost and second to them. So those were the kind of people that if they didn't get it after a while, I just came to the conclusion that maybe our time as friends had either come to an end or our friendship would have to shift where I was keeping people more at arm's length and closer in because they were expecting me to be the girl of the past. They were expecting me to be the person that on a dime could hop in the car and go hang out on a Saturday night. Life changes, your priorities change, your schedule changes, your interests change. Lord knows, I prefer to be home at night now. I didn't always used to be like that. So, saying no to things that no longer serve me and saying yes to my own peace of mind, to my own time is really, really important to me. Along the same lines, principle two, it's related, but it's a little bit different. And that is minding my time and business, minding my own time and business. Lately, the way that that has manifested itself has been in limiting social media and taking breaks more often. So when I talk about social media, I can go through spells where I'm spending hours and hours a day on YouTube and on Instagram and on TikTok. Sometimes that's fun and it's okay to indulge in that. But I have sort of physical signals and mental signals where I'm like, okay, it's time to put this on the back burner and go do other things. And especially when I start to get sick of what I'm seeing. So I have a fragrance channel, as you all know. When I'm on Instagram and I've seen the umpteenth bottle of fragrance being featured, and I start to do one of these numbers, I know it's time to get off of Instagram. It doesn't serve me and it doesn't serve the people whose content I am. This is a rocking chair, by the way, so in case you hear some creaking, that's what's going on. It doesn't serve the people that I follow for me to continue to scroll through content that isn't mentally stimulating me, emotionally bringing me joy, or whatever the case may be. So I've learned to limit my social media time. Some days I'm better at that than others. And I've learned to also not watch the news. Oof, that's a big one, especially for people in my life who think I should be more aware of what's happening in the news. I'm going to tell you what, I quit watching the news probably at least 8 years ago, probably 10 years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood. I haven't missed it. I haven't missed it. I have not missed it. I've been fine. The world continues to turn. In fact, I thrive a lot more when I don't watch the news. Believe me, if there's something important happening in this world that you need to know about, it's going to make its way to you. You don't need to sit in front of the 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock news, listening to all of the horrible things that happen in this world. When that is all that you consume, or rather, when you consume a lot of that, you start to see the world that way. Like that becomes your lens. You think that everyone is a murderer. You think that everyone is an abuser. You think that child molesters are everywhere. You think that the world is going to just fall apart, that nations are never going to be able to solve their differences, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You get where I'm going with that. I have found when I look back on the time that I spent watching the news, it did nothing. It does nothing to enhance your life. It does nothing to raise your awareness of anything. All it does is feed you reasons to hate people, reasons to be paranoid, and reasons to think that you should walk through this world in a defensive, suspicious way. I can't do that. I can't do that. I have a lot of that already naturally ingrained in me from growing up. I don't need to add anything more to that. And I find that protecting my peace of mind by staying away from the news is is beneficial for me. I find that the news and things like that create worry that you didn't need to have in the first place. And worry, I have come to know at this point in my life, is a 100% waste of your mental and emotional energy. There is nothing that comes from worrying. And this is from a worry wart or someone who can be a worry wart sometimes. So keep that in mind. So, minding my business, I don't worry about what other folks are doing. I might joke around about what other folks are doing because I like a good gossip just as much as the next person, believe me. But I don't worry about people. What Joe Schmo is doing with their relationship, with their money, with their education, with their career, I don't care. You do you, I do me. Period. End of story. Now, if you doing you starts to impede on me doing me, then we got another thing to talk about. But for the most part, I'm of the mindset of let people live, live and let live, live and let live. So I mind my business. I got enough of my own business to take care of. And I mind my time as much as possible. Some days I'm better at it than others. Three is a lot of what I started this conversation with, which is releasing guilt and obligation. Those are illusions. They don't actually exist. There isn't a shelf you can go to where you can grab a bottle of guilt. There's not a store where you can buy obligation. Those are inventions of the mind, right? Shackles on your mind from messages that you have heard in the past. And this is something that's ongoing, you all, because it's so like part of my DNA. Like I feel guilt and obligation at a cellular level, like down in the metabolism of my cells. Do you hear me? At the atomic level. And I have to just be conscious when thoughts of guilt and obligation pop up to really examine those and see it from my adult lens versus from my little girl lens. You know what I mean? And really decide, is this a true thing that I should feel some guilt over? And if so, what does that mean? Is this something that I should feel a sense of obligation about? And if so, why? Like just asking the questions, why? And so what? And what do I do about this are really important. But I also want to say that I've gotten to a place where I felt less guilt about who I am as a person, what my personal interests are. I'll give you an example. When I went away to boarding school, I became interested in other kinds of music than the music that I grew up with. People around me from my cultural background did not appreciate that. They wanted me to be the person they thought I should be. They wanted me to stay the same. And when I expanded my musical interests, they called me all kinds of names because of that, right? I got criticized, but I think because of things like that, you know? So, you're trying to be white. That's not our music. That's not made for us. Why are you listening to that, white girl stuff? Why are you listening to whatever it may be? And I used to feel guilty about it and try to defend it and all of that. There's a thousand examples of that. I used the music one, but you can imagine how that seeps its way into lots of other places in your life. But I'm at a point now where I'm comfortable with my interests. So, for example, you're watching me on this channel. I love fragrance. I'm not going to feel bad about that. And I'm not going to apologize to a single soul about that. I spend my money that I set aside for that on it. I don't owe anybody any explanations about that. I like makeup. I got a lot of it. I got more than I'll ever use. That is nobody's business. It's paid for with my money. I use it how I please, and it brings me joy. So, pardon my French, to hell with what everybody else thinks about it. Same thing with all of my other possessions. The same thing with the way that I behave myself in this world. I have some limits. I've shared that in other videos. When you get to a point where your behavior is rude to other people, imposing on other people, and obnoxious to other people, that's the line. But when I'm on this side of that, like the minding my own business side of that, and I'm just doing me, people have problems with that. I'm done feeling guilty about it, and I'm done feeling obligated to explain myself to them. That goes along with my desires. For example, I get up early in the morning, I come sit in this rocking chair, and I have a cup of coffee and I do my facial stuff like my microcurrent device or now my Omnilux red light therapy. That's what I do. That is what I do. I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel like I'm overly indulgent. None of that. I don't feel guilty about what I do in my own leisure time anymore. My time, my money, my energy, my decisions, my decisions. So the bottom line is that my interests, my desires, my needs, they're all valid. They're all valid. And as long as I'm not stepping on other people's toes, then I'm going to do what I want to do. And then I'll leave you with the fourth one, which is actually the fifth one, because I started with the fifth one. So this is really principle number 5. This is a big one. And this is where, as you get older, you also gain wisdom. So at the same time that I feel like as I get older, the less I know, the less I used to think I knew a lot. Now I know that I don't know anything. You know what I mean? This one is about wisdom, and it's about exercising restraint. Exercising restraint. One of the things that I despise the most is an undisciplined tongue and an undisciplined perspective. So when I encounter someone that says things like, I just tell it like it is, or I'm going to tell you what's on my mind, that's a signal to me that that person is undisciplined in the way that they express themselves. And that's a signal to me that that person is probably toxic. It's not the same in every single situation. So if you're someone out there that's like, I speak my mind, just take a look at yourself. Maybe you're that kind of person, maybe you're not. But I have found more often than not that people that say that tend to be toxic individuals because what they think they're doing is being honest and forthright. But instead, what they end up doing is like showering other people with the diarrhea of their thoughts. There's a time and a place to exercise restraint. And I've become more in tune with when that is, with when that is. So there's 2 things that come to mind. I'm looking down at my little notes here that I wanted to make sure I shared with you all. Knowing when to hold your tongue. Knowing when to hold your tongue. You don't have to say everything that's on your mind, my friends. In fact, I would encourage you to test it. Test it over the next week or so. How many times can you hold your tongue and still feel at peace? How many times can you observe a situation unfolding, see something happening, feel like you'd like to give somebody a piece of their mind? We talked about this in the video about comments on social media, and you know I struggle with that. How many times can you just be a detached observer and hold your tongue and thereby preserve your peace of mind and your stability? So you don't drag yourself into an argument that's going to end up nowhere. That's going to be a dead end argument where no one wins. No one wins. How many times can you hold your tongue so that you don't say something that you think is truthful, but is actually hurtful to someone else? How many times can you hold your tongue so that you can really hear other people and listen and absorb what other people are trying to say? I find that this is really important in meetings at work. Sometimes a team that I'm in will say to me at the end of a conversation, well, what are your thoughts, Veronica? Because we know you have something wise to offer. And I'm always shocked by that because I'm like, me? The imposter syndrome creeps up and I'm like, do I have something wise to offer? But here's what has really happened. I've had the benefit of listening to how everyone else thinks about the thing that we're talking about. And all of their thoughts have helped me to formulate a more full, comprehensive picture of what a possible approach or solution is to the challenge that we're dealing with. And in that sense, I have much more to offer, a much more enriched and informative response than if I had spoken first straight out of the gate, or second or third because I felt like my voice needed to be heard. You know what I mean? Your voice maybe doesn't need to be heard. So I challenge that sort of modern day thinking of speak your mind, make your voice heard. Sometimes it's actually better to be quiet and listen and watch and observe. Hold your tongue. Sit still. Be still. Be still, observe, and learn. And you'll find that that will afford you a level of wisdom and insight that you could never have had if you had led the conversation or jumped out of the gate. There's a time for that. There's a time for that. And part of being wise is knowing the difference. Along with that, and the same thing about exercising restraint is checking your ego. I have a pretty big ego sometimes, and I have to be careful about where it shows up. Where my ego shows up the most can be at work. And it can be here in my house when we're having conversations about whatever. Fill in the blank, it really doesn't matter. And I feel like I need to prove that I know things, that I'm smart and that I'm wise, and that I have a contribution, similar to what I was just saying. Same thing at work. When we're in a meeting and we're talking, I have to check myself. Am I offering something constructive? Or am I saying this because I want my colleagues to think that I'm smart? That is a life changing question, friends. Am I offering a real contribution? Or am I about to say this because I want people to think that I'm smart, that I'm clever? Mind blowing when you take a minute and you'll find more often than not that you didn't need to say the thing you thought you needed to say. And it's okay. You're still smart. People still look at you as smart. You don't have to prove that in every meeting. You just don't. It's okay. So, my friends, those are the 5 principles that I have used to reinvent myself to get to a calmer, more zen place. There are times that I struggle, like in the video where I shared with you all my disdain for poor manners on social media. That's an example of when I struggle to live through these principles or live these principles rather. But really, by and large, more often than not, here is what's driving me here is what's driving my behavior on a day to day basis and guiding the way that I exist and live in this world among other people, which can be difficult some days, but these help make it easy. I would so love to hear your thoughts. One, did you enjoy this video? Do you like this kind of content? And two, what are some principles that you've learned to live by to keep yourself centered, whole, at peace, and feeling good? What are your soft life principles, friends? Mwah. Love you guys. Thanks so much for hanging out. If you stayed this long, God bless you. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.